don't drink. It's a choice I made from a young age. I grew up in a home where alcohol was like water. And much of the extended family relied on alcohol. There was no limit to their drinking. Binge drinking. They drank to get drunk. That was it. They drank to get drunk. And then usually what would happen is they would get angry, emotional. Abuse would start happening. Violence. So for me as a child, the smell of alcohol was something that I associated with much of the trauma that I went through, because that smell was present during the physical abuse, sexual abuse, all of it. And as a kid, the smell of it became something that disgusted me, it turned my stomach. I would smell it just because I associated it with all these negative and bad things. I never saw it in a good light. Never saw anybody drunk in a nice way. There was a complete lack of control with the adults and their alcohol. When they were drunk, they would do anything. They were driving cars, beating each other up, yelling, beating up us kids. And the smell just dominated it, just dominated the house. So it put me off. As a teenager, in my late teens and early 20s, I gave it a go a couple of times, maybe a handful of times, and I got drunk. One of the things I really didn't like about it was the lack of control. And I was so worried about repeating the cycle. In other videos, I've mentioned about how my mother put on me that I was going to grow up and be a monster like my biological father, who was a rapist and a sex offender. And she told me from the age of 8 that I would grow up and no matter what I did, I was going to end up being a monster like him. And that there was nothing I could do to avoid it. I was set on proving her wrong. So I saw alcohol as a hindrance to that ambition and focus of mine not to end up being a monster. And I wanted to be different from my parents. I did not feel safe at home. I did not feel loved. There was no comfort or safety in my childhood. I never felt okay as a kid. Never felt okay. And I didn't want to repeat that. So as a teenager, I was already thinking to myself of what do I need to avoid in order to stay away from this trouble, from these dark behaviors, dark thoughts, dark ways of being. I did not want to be an abusive person. I did not want to go around hurting others. I was out to prove to the world that I was okay, that I was essentially a good person. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to belong. Now, the problem with wanting to belong is that all I could see was everyone I knew around me was enjoying alcohol. So there was a moment, there was a time where I wanted to be a part of it. So I got drunk sometimes. It was short-lived. It didn't take long for there to be a time where I was under the influence and I just did not feel good. I wrote about this in my book, White Moko. And so if you really want the gory details, you can check it out in there. Short story. There was a couple of episodes where I was drunk and I just was not in control. I was not okay. I was not safe. In the last instance, I was with some friends and I told them to leave. I told them to go. I was just so angry. I could feel it in me. Just this rage building up about everything I'd been through, about all the abuse and of how the world had seen me and how I had been treated. And I wanted to punish. I wanted to take out my anger on the world. And so there was this moment where I was just full of rage. And I asked everybody to leave, and I locked myself in my bedroom, and I made myself go to bed. I went to bed. I slept it off. It scared me. That showed me the dangers of alcohol. That if I was going to get drunk, there was a high chance that I was going to continue the cycles of abuse, and that I would hurt the ones that I loved, the ones that I cared about, the ones that were around me. I didn't want to be that person. So that was it. No alcohol for me. To this day, I do not drink. My partner is from China, so there are times where I will visit family in China, and there is quite a custom of having a glass of Chinese white wine with the elders. Now, I do that very rarely, but I do it just out of respect for them and just because it's part of their culture. But I'm not getting drunk. Otherwise, I don't touch alcohol. You know, there's the health benefits of not touching the alcohol as well, which is a blessing, which is good. But for me, the main focus was I wanted to be safe for my children and safe for my partner. People do silly things on alcohol. That wasn't going to be me. So I'm very glad of my decision. I think it was a great decision, and I think when we're wanting to look after our families, those are the sort of decisions we have to make. If we're wanting to be a good parent, if we're wanting to be a good partner, then we need to be careful about what we are putting in our bodies and about how we're altering our state of mind. And lack of control, lack of full awareness, and being under the influence of drugs or alcohol puts us at risk of doing things that we will regret. And I don't want any of that over me. It was a really good decision for me. It meant that I have been safe as a partner and as a parent, safe as a husband and a father. And I'm glad for that. It was the same story with drugs. Again, as a young person, there was a couple of times I tried it. But again, same story. I did not want to be under the influence of anything that took away my self-control. Self-control is it for me. That's it. That's it. You want to succeed in life, you want to achieve at anything, you want to do well, self-control. You look at every time that you've lost self-control. Every time that I've lost self-control, it has not gone well. It's so important to retain control so that we know what's happening around us, and we know how that we are fully aware of the choices we're making and putting the utmost care into our decisions and our behaviours. Now, look, if you drink, that's your choice. I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to condemn or anything like that. I'm not telling you what to do. I have found that not drinking and not doing drugs has been really beneficial for me and has meant that I have been safe and a good influence for my family, for my kids, my wife. And it's put me in a very strong position as a guiding parent. And my kids have seen the benefits of it. So that is why I don't drink or do drugs. Very personal choice, having come from that trauma and that abuse. that smell, those behaviours that I witnessed as a kid put me off alcohol, and I've stayed clear of it. Same with the drugs. You know, drugs are all around me as a kid as well. So those two things I associate with violence and abuse. Anger, rage, hurting others. And that association came from my traumatic childhood, because the people that hurt me were majority of the time under the influence, which is very handy, isn't it? Because it means they can choose not to remember. It's an excuse that's used often. I've seen in court cases it gets used a lot, that the person was under the influence, so wasn't thinking straight. It's a pretty weak excuse, really. For me, I feel it's important to share it, because people often ask me, how have you done it, Tim? How have you broken the cycle? How have you moved away from the violence and the abuse that you grew up with? How are you different? Staying away from drugs and alcohol has really been a big part of that. If you're brought up with these addictions, if those addictions are around you, then you are more likely to repeat them. You are more likely to become an addict. Statistically, just factually, it's just if you are around addiction, you are more likely to become an addict yourself. I thought I was very clever, of course, with abstaining from alcohol and drugs. Pat myself on the back, because, hey, I'm not doing those behaviours. However, of course, what I did do was I took on other addictions. Sugar would be a big one, bad food. Yeah, I really went into that, binged big time. And, I sort of fooled myself into thinking that I was doing well. But it was still an addiction. And there were other addictions that I took on that weren't healthy for me either. So I think we've always got to question our cravings. Challenge our cravings is something I've always said. Challenge our cravings. If we've got a craving, why? I mean, not if you're pregnant, that's a completely different story. But normally, if we've got cravings, why? What's behind that? If you're craving a particular type of food at a certain time, well, that's understandable, but I'm talking about those cravings where it's that constant, you're needing a fix of something, whatever it is, shopping, food, alcohol, drugs, gambling, those things. We need to challenge those. Why am I doing this? What is this behaviour really about? Why am I choosing not to be in control? Why am I allowing this external influence to have such power over me? Anyway, I thought I'd just share that of why I do not drink and do drugs. If you're enjoying my content, please like, share and subscribe, and talk soon.